Okay, welcome to my video. This is the format I'm going to be using when I take my great Valentine Goose uh, adventure this coming in about 3 weeks now. I've just wanted to talk a little bit about treasure hunts because this whole purpose of this trip, well, it's kind of twofold. One is I'm going to do some things I've never done before, things that I wanted to do when I lived out west. That I never got a chance to. So I'm taking a week off and I'm going to do some of these things. I'm going to be in the mountains for a couple of days. I'm going to be in the desert for a couple of days. I'm going to be in Nebraska in the grasslands for a couple of days. So it's going to be interesting. And part of this is when I passed through Denver, I just wanted to check some of the locations. And when I created my book, The Beacon Star, I actually walked through all the clues. I did it mentally like probably 100 times, but one time as part of my vetting process, I walked through everything as if I was a single person solving this. And I haven't done that in like 3 years now. So I'm just when I get to Denver, I'm going to go through and do my walkthrough again just to make sure everything's still there and everything still works, which I'm sure it is. Let me go back a little bit. And first of all, let me say I'm not going to give any clues out. I don't believe in giving clues out. I started researching treasure hunts at a very young age. I'm talking back, well, real treasures. Excuse me, real treasures going back to the Beale cipher. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, I actually had cut out from a magazine the 3 Beale ciphers, and I had them on the wall next to my bed. I mean, that's how long I've been studying ciphers and stuff. So I've always wanted to do my own treasure hunt. And back then, there weren't very many to go on, and there was no way to research. There was no internet. But I came across a few over the years. I think some of the first ones were like the golden apple tail, and the whistle pig, and some of those, the secret. And you got to remember that these were before the internet, and these were treasure hunts done with people with maps and people going out to locations. And it was a different world back then. I know in the secret, some of the places where he hid little casks with keys in them, porcelain cask, and he buried them. And these days you can't go into a park and just dig a hole. I mean, you get in a lot of trouble doing that. And he did this back in a time when I don't think anyone would bat an eye. And he also was on some private land. A lot of people believe that they've done the solves. They believe he was on private land. And in today's world, security is everything, and that's just not going to fly. And I know he passed away. The guy that wrote The Secret passed away. I did get to speak to his widow once through some email exchanges. Nobody knows where he kept his answers, and nobody knows where the prizes are. He kept them in a bank security box, and when he passed away, nobody knew where this was. And so finding those are just, a feather in your cap. But I know some people, the Chicago one is pretty well solved, and a lot of people have gone there. And I know at least one person got permission from the Parks Department to dig, and they didn't find anything. Again, it's been so long since he hit them, so it's hard to say. But a lot of these people wrote their books. I know the whistle pig, well, the golden apple tail at least was written under an alias, so no one knows how to contact the person who wrote this book. And I love that idea. I love the idea of not giving clues out. It's there, it's solvable, and you shouldn't need clues. One of the things, the reason I don't like to give clues out, because I think it's a cop-out. And it goes back to me watching horror movies, believe it or not. A good example is a horror movie called The Woman in the Black Dress with Daniel Radcliffe. And it was it moved along well. He was solving a mystery. And I love horror movies where they're solving the mystery. And it gets to a point where he goes into town and he meets someone, and this guy just lays it all out for him. He just tells him, well, this is what you got to do, and this is what happened. And, he supposedly communicated with the ghost in the past, and he just laid it all out. And I hated that. I'm like, that's a cop-out. The person solving the mystery didn't solve the mystery. And I know Forrest Fenn, he hid his treasure after I hid mine. But every time he speaks to a crowd, he's giving hints. He gives clues, and he'll answer questions. And I think sooner or later he's going to just divulge too much, and it's just going to give it away. One thing I liked, of course, I was involved with the Treasure Trove by Michael Stather, and he came out with one clue, and people solved it, and the clue was just that there were red herrings, and that's all it said. And then he came out with a second clue that no one had ever solved. The story was done. Everyone had found the treasure before the second clue was solved. And of course, then he passed away. So the second clue has just never been solved. And that's kind of, to give out your clues in another puzzle, that's one thing, but he did it very sparingly. I'm not sure what the second clue was, and we think it had something to do with the reveal that there was a 13th treasure, because the treasure trove was advertised as having 12 treasures, and there was a 13th one. But yeah, I don't want to give out clues, and that's one of the reasons, going way back to these pre-internet treasure hunts. One of the things one of the reasons I'm doing this video is because last night I kind of had some free time, and I promised myself I wouldn't do this. I know there's forums. Two of the biggest forums are like the Quest for Treasure and 12.org. These are forums where people discuss treasure hunt and they share clues. And this is something, I did come up with the second prize, and not the second prize, but I was the second person to solve one of the prizes in the treasure trove. And because of that, we got to have dinner with Michael Stather. And one of the things he said to me was, he was like me. He had done treasure hunts and he'd been involved with it before the internet. So when he did his hunt, and I mean, there were chat rooms and forums and private messages and everything, people were discussing it. And if someone solved something, they put it out there. They put it, they let everyone know. And he said he was shocked about that. He thought one person would probably find 90% of all the treasures in his book. He thought one person would at least get like 10 or 11 of the jewels that he hid. He did not expect people to share so much and end up, there were 13 tokens that he had, and 13 different people found the tokens. And so that kind of played into it too, because I'm going from, I don't want to give clues out, to I know people are going to share what they solve, and it's just inevitable. So my hunt was designed for that. And I did, I probably got 20 treasure hunt books at home. Some are solved, some are not. And every once in a while I pull them out. But like I said, last night I went into a forum and just kind of checking out my book. And one person did post one of the solves, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what Michael Stather said he didn't believe people would do. And there it was. So that's kind of got me going, and I don't want to go into forums. I'm not going to answer questions in forums. I did create some myself just to reserve the name, on Reddit and Facebook. I didn't want someone to create something that looked like the official page in my book. So I did go in and create some myself just so I could have a little bit of control over that. And these forums, these were very active forums back when I was doing a treasure trove, very active. And I'll tell you, looking at the dates, I mean, there was some forums that haven't been spoken in years. And it's kind of disappointing. I think what happened was when Michael came out with his second book, The Alchemist Star, there was a lot of issues with that. He sold over 1 million copies of a treasure trove. And I think that, that's 1 million people involved in this treasure hunt. And the problem was, with Alchemist Star, he didn't even come close to that. And he had promised the publisher that he would hit 2 million. Well, there was a big lawsuit about whether or not he promised. But the publisher sued him for not selling enough books, and there was a big thing. And I think because of that, no one will ever know how to solve that puzzle because he passed away. And I think because of that, there was a big dive. A lot of people got out of it. One thing I noted about Quest for Treasure, where there's a lot more treasure hunts on that one, but that's based in the UK, and it included a lot of European hunts. So I was really amazed at how many hunts there are out there, but there's not very many still going in the US. There's Fandango. I wrote some down here. That's pretty much it, Fandango, that I can think of. And the ones that are older that are still active. Someone did hear back from the author of The Whistle Pig. He said the key is still out there. Who knows? And then The Secret, of course, is, like that's a feather in your cap one, because you'll never get the prize in that one. The Golden Apple. The Golden Apple, the guy was anonymous, and the P.O. box where you're supposed to send letters in no longer exists. So that one's kind of in limbo too. But supposedly this Golden Apple is still buried out there somewhere. And so following all these, and like I said, I talked to the widow of the author that wrote The Secret. I've talked to Michael Stather several times, and I kind of, I've always had the idea for a treasure hunt, and I've always had an idea of how I would plant my clues and everything. And learning these lessons, what different people did, like I will never bury a treasure. I think that's kind of silly, and that opens up risks. That opens up the possibility of lawsuits, not just lawsuits, but getting in trouble for digging on property. So I wanted to do like what Michael did. He dropped his tokens inside the knotholes of trees, which is really risky. In fact, the 13th token is kind of a coincidence that it was the 13th token. Somebody solved it. They went there. They said they couldn't find it. And, again, much to his surprise, someone posted what the location was, and hundreds of people went there. And someone pointed out that there's a stump there. So they think the tree that he put the token in was actually cut down. And it was by pure luck, just pure luck. Someone was walking out and they saw the token in a mud puddle and picked it up. And the assumption is the tree was cut down, the tree was loaded up and dried, shipped out, and this had fallen out of the tree while it was being shipped down out of the park. So I didn't want that to happen either. I didn't want to put something out there somewhere. And so I came up with this location, and I vetted this location year round. When I first found it, I was sitting there thinking, wow, this would be a great place to put a prize, and I would stand there thinking, I'm like, well, what could happen in this spot that would make it go away? First of all, no one's ever going to find it by accident, which is a big thing that could happen. I mean, anyone could have stumbled upon one of those tokens in a tree hole. So I sat there and I would watch people walk by, and I thought, there's no way anyone's going to find this by accident. And then I thought, well, what if this area flooded? What if it burnt to the ground with a grass fire? What if this happened or that happened? And in every scenario, and I like I said, I did this year round. I would go there and I would hang out there on weekend after weekend, and I would do it in the winter time and in the summertime and during the rainy season. And I just kept coming up with, it's going to work. It's going to work. So then I had clues worked out long ahead of time. I just never had a hunt or anything that I could use, just to put the thing together. And I stumbled upon, it was a 2012 or 2014 gold coin worth about, and when I bought it, it was worth like $2,400. I actually bought it because they were paying me the wrong salary. So I ended up with all this money, and I was kind of baffled. I even called my HR office one day, and I was like, I think you're paying me too much. And yeah, they did. They said, we can't force you to pay it back because there's laws about that, but we're gonna have to put you back at the right salary. And But I had all this money in the bank, so I bought this coin, and I thought that would make the great prize. And I want to make it clear that I did not hide the coin. The coin is not out there. What it's out there is a token with the instructions on the back on how to redeem it. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want someone to stumble upon um, the token, because I think that happened. I want to say that happened in a hunt, and they asked the guy how he solved to find the token. He couldn't answer it. He said he just found it, and there was some give and take on whether or not he should get the prize. But I like I said, I'm pretty sure no one's going to stumble upon this where it is. But yeah, so I had the clues thought out, and I thought, okay, I need a story to wrap around this. Now, I kind of consider myself an author, and if you haven't gone to Amazon, I have 4 shorts. If you get any of my books, 4 shorts I think is free for Kindle for certain people. Otherwise, I put it at the very lowest price, like a penny or something. 4 shorts is one of those won a prize when I was in college, but those are like short stories that I'm really proud of. I really like them. They're short stories, so they're easy to read. But I was like, no, these are already published. I'm not going to turn one of these into a treasure trove or into a treasure hunt. And I had other stories. I always, at any given time, I probably have, a good 15 or 20 synopses of, these are books I'm going to write. So I was going through those, and nothing really fit. I did write, in the meantime, I wrote like Rebecca's Lament and 3 Men in a Tub. And 3 Men in a Tub was supposed to be my breakthrough book, but again, hardly ever selling. But I had this story because another thing I do is I document cemeteries, and I have literally over tens of thousands of pictures of cemeteries. I'll go into a cemetery, and one of the things I'll do is I'll look for symbols on the tombstones, or any symbols I haven't seen before, and I document the symbols, or any names that are curious or anything like that, or famous people. But one day I was walking through the cemetery, and I was looking for a name, and I mean, this cemetery is huge and had tens of thousands of people, and was just a freaking huge cemetery. And I thought, all I have is a name. There's no way I'm going to find this. And I was walking, I thought, well, I wonder if I walk in a pattern. And it just dawned in my head, like, what if these were doors? And, from that, there's a lot of things that I put together to make the story. So this story is a raw story that I created just for the treasure hunt. And it's kind of neat because a lot of things in the story, like the Gons, Gons were something that I created in art class in high school. Out of clay, I used to make all these creatures. And, I made this creature that had no head, and the face was on the chest. And it just looked really cool. And I thought, someday I'm going to put that in a book. And as I was writing this, I needed like a tough guy. I thought, oh man, I'm going to make that of Gons. And some other things I always thought about was like, there's always adventures, and they stop at the inn for the night. But no one knows what that innkeeper was. So I wanted to write something where an adventurer comes in, and you kind of get a slice of his adventure, but then he's gone. And, sometimes you don't hear what happened after they left. That innkeeper might not know if he succeeded or failed, or, what happened. So I thought that's kind of a neat perspective. And so I used that in the Gons, and the idea of the hill with the doors. And then Crescent, Crescent doesn't go all the way around the hill, because, part of the lore of the hill is that anyone can access it from the back without having to go through the city. And I had to throw a princess in, and, all this good stuff. And so this story was created, and I did have like a slight synopsis, but I literally wrote the story around the clues that I already had. And, so the story is just a vehicle to deliver the clues. And, I like clues. It's not just the coding. There's a word called steganography, and it's an old word, and it's the idea of hiding a message in a picture. Or like Notre Dame Cathedral is supposedly, before it burned down, but it had rumors that the placement of the statues told a story, and there were codes in how the pillars were placed and how the tiles were laid out. like Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code type stuff. But that steganography is hiding a message in a picture, basically. Now, if you look it up, there's a modern steganography where there's actually, you encode a message into a JPEG or a picture, and you have to have special software to encode and decode it. That's not the steganography I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual old time messages in pictures, and I've always played with that. So I'm looking at my notes here. But I was intrigued with that. So it's not just the story, but it's the pictures that go along with the story that, hold the clues. And I wanted to make it, some of the clues are really easy to solve. And that's the one I saw on the forum. I saw, someone did this, and that was like my step 1 clues. And then there's like step 2 clues and step 3 clues and step 4 clues. And they get harder and harder to even find as you go along. But they're there, and the clues that precede them kind of point to it. And I also wanted the clues to like take you to the location. And like, I know Michael Stather, some people saw for the park and they went and they searched the whole park. And I mean, the odds of you finding something like that are astronomical, but it's possible. Or if they solved the other clues and were like, well, we know it's in this tiny spot, we just don't know which park. And if they go to several parks and check that one spot, they might find it as well. So do you need to solve every single clue? Maybe not, but if you do solve every single clue, it will take you to within inches, literally within inches. You stick your finger there, and I think that's about right, a finger length. But that's how close, if you solve all the clues, that you'll get to the prize. So let's see. Covered that. I wanted to write things down because these were thoughts that were going through my head at work. And I knew when I take my Valentine Goose, I'm going to do a lot of videos. And this is the format it's going to be. It's going to be me in the car talking to the phone. And there's going to, I actually planned out which videos I'm going to do and when and in which part of the country. And so this is kind of, like I said, a proof of concept. But I wanted to talk about, like, that's why my trip was. So, let me look here. Yeah, big clues, small clues. So that's basically, I think I covered everything that I had here. So that's basically it. The story, it may be a little bit quirky, but that's because I had to work clues into parts of it. I like the idea of, this medieval place where like all magic comes together. It's kind of like Piers Anthony wrote a series of book about a land called Xanth, and he tried to include everything into this land. Every mythological creature you could think of and every type of magic you can think of. And that's kind of what this is. It's not quite that, but it's just kind of a vague area, but there's lots of magical creatures there. And I just, like I said, I wrote that as a wrapper for my clues. And I wanted to point out that, solving the clues will take you right there. And again, this trip, I'm going to go there. I've been to the spot where the prize is several times. And I verified that it's there. No one's found it. No one's touched it. I know a lot of times there's lots of people around. I don't want someone to see me poking around and then go poke around after me and then maybe accidentally find it. So a lot of times I go there and I have to wait because there's lots of people around. And then I'll check. I'll do a really quick check, and then I'll stand up and go, and I'm like, yeah, it's still there. But like I said, this trip, I actually budgeted like a day and a half for Denver, because I'm not sure how long. I know drive times and stuff are always, I lived in Denver. I know what drive times are like. And I probably just gave away a clue. But yeah, I'm going to verify everything is where it is. I know at least one location was dug up, but put back the exact way it was. So that's one of the things I want to check. And I'm saying this, but people have already posted all this stuff, so I don't think it's anything new. So I'm going to go back and just verify things are still there. And another thing, now that I've said all this and it looks like I've done like 25 minutes, I know at the beginning I said no clues, but I'm going to give you a clue just for hanging around. And this is hidden, so don't tell anybody it's here. So if they don't watch the video all the way through, they don't get the clue. But going back to steganography, one of the things I wanted to do, and I still work on it from time to time, was I made a poster, and I wanted to see how many codes I could put into the poster, into this limited space. And I think I was up to like 28 or 30 codes. And it's like a surreal picture, lots of symbols, lots of geometric shapes, and literally there's 28 or 30, I think 28 at the last count. I haven't worked on it in a while, but it just had code after code on top of codes, and codes that you can solve it, the same exact thing, but you can solve it 2 or 3 different ways. And I'm just fascinated with that, and I just wanted to see how many I can cram in there. And if I hit a certain number, I thought, well, maybe I'll just publish this as a poster and let people try to solve all the codes and maybe put a prize on that. So, as part of the preparation for that, I was doing codes on separate pieces of paper. And when I was doing my Beacon Star book, I had all the plates put together, and I called the brick codes and the picture codes, and I was one short. And I thought, what am I going to use to fill in this? I can't, the way Amazon publishes their books, I didn't want to put text on the same page as a picture. So I thought, well, I need one more picture. But I'm done with my clues. What am I going to do? And I grabbed a sheet from my poster and I put it in there. And I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but it's kind of obvious when you look at it. So there's a possibility you can solve phrases from that picture, but it's all a red herring. They have nothing to do with the book. So there's a clue for you. There's one picture that, and I would have to actually work it to find out what the codes say, but it has nothing to do with the book, even if you do solve things. So don't waste your time on that one picture. It's a filler. But yeah, the rest of the book, it's ready to go. I'm hoping maybe this might bring some publicity. I might order a few copies and stop at a bookstore in Denver. I'm just not brave that way. I know there's people, I have friends that are semi-famous who wouldn't hesitate to go into a bookstore and say, hey, look, sell these and promote these. And I can't do that. I can't promote myself, but this video and this whole trip will hopefully do some of that for me. But don't tell anybody that there's a clue at the end of this. Make them listen to the whole thing. But that's my thought process. That's how this book came about, and I'm kind of happy with it. One of the things I also liked is when I would read the Whistle Pig, and I still pull the Whistle Pig out once in a while, or the Golden Apple Tail, and I'm like, the Golden Apple Tail's been around for 35 years, and the Whistle Pig came out in 2003. So what is it, 2003? That's almost 20 years. But I wanted my book to kind of be like that. I wanted to have longevity. But then on the other hand, I know people are going to share, and the more people share, the faster it's going to get solved. So as soon as someone solves a clue, there's very few people that hold that to themselves. They want to, it's a bragging thing. And I know that when I was working on the treasure trove, I did the same thing. I remember sitting at my desk in my office. I had a different job back then, and I just was on a break, and I was kind of looking at the pictures, and I noticed, hey, there's 2 colors, and these 2 colors alternate down this branch. And I was like, I know the first solve was a polybius square, and this is perfect. It's 2 colors, so you get a grid coordinate, a grid location from each set of colors. And it worked. And I remember sitting there going, oh my God. And then and this is all coincidence, when I solved it, I'm like, that's a park that's within 2 hours drive from my home. So I didn't have to. I know some people drove clear across the country because the park they found, was on one side of the country and they were on the other side of the country. But this was like 2 hours from my house. And I remember looking at it going, oh, and I couldn't wait. And I actually got out of work early and I went and I picked my son up from school. And I was like, look, I solved this. And we went, and he was actually the one, because we searched the area and we couldn't find it. And he was actually the one that was like, Dad, on your page, the tree that has these leaves on it, he said it's drawn to look exactly like this tree over here. And I don't think that was known. I think that was like a new clue that no one had figured out yet, because we were the second ones to find one. And I was like, okay. And we went and we searched this tree like crazy. We couldn't find anything. We'd actually given up. I mean, we'd been there for hours. And I had a big Suburban, and I said, you can keep looking. I'm going to go turn the Suburban around. And when I come back, we'll take off. And he's like, yeah, okay. And when I turned the Suburban around, he was like jumping up and down. He was all happy, and he was pointing at his fists, and he come running up to the car, and he goes, I found it. It was right where I said it was. So I give him credit, my son, Evan. And if you look at the old forums where he posts this, I always give him credit. He is the one that found it. He got half the prize. I wish I would have kept the token. The token was actually better than the gem I got, that snail with the pink diamonds. But yeah, I wish I would have kept the token and just said, hey, I want this. Gold is so heavy when you got solid gold in your hand. And that's why I got into gold coins. But yeah, just that feeling of you did it, and I know people are going to share on the internet, and I know it's going to happen. But I try to make it so that either they share and it happens quickly, or they don't share and it goes on for a little bit. And so that's my story. And this is, like I said, this is a proof of concept. I'm going to do a lot of videos in my car on some at night when it's really scary. But yeah, so watch the channel. I'm going to post these on a channel called Valentine Goose. Or was it Goose Valentine? Anyway, I'm going to post it on a channel. And you can follow along. And there's going to be parts where I'm talking about the treasure, but a lot of it's going to be about the adventures I wanted to go on that I never had a chance to. So I'm going to wrap it up. Have a good day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, keep an eye on the channel. I'm 3 weeks out, but I'm going to post this one early. And when I leave, just before I leave for my trip, I got one video planned that's pre-trip, and then the rest will all be on my trip. So just keep an eye out for that, and I hope you all have a good time, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you keep your mouth shut. So take care and have a good day.